It's taken me a long time to think I could bring anything interesting to a buyer's guide for Marvel Champions, but that is no more. You see, I didn't want to just roll out the facts, big box here, small box there, blah blah blah. I wanted to get to the essence of what a buyer might be looking for and then start the product showcase. Simples. So let's not cuck around, on with the show. As I've already alluded to then, I didn't want this to be typical consumer advice mumbo jumbo, but there's no way around one immutable fact. You need to pick up the core box before you do anything. But before you say thanks to that Captain Obvious, you have to understand that its absence would expose me to ceaseless mockery. Anyways, everything in one box, you don't need multiple copies, 5 heroes and 3 villain scenarios to choose from, all you technically need. This is your ground floor reception area, nuff said. We then move to Secondary Value Town, where you get the most heroes and villains for your coin, and they are contained within the sporadically delicious deluxe expansions, each containing 2 soups and 5 Dick Dastardlies, plus a little narrative campaign for you to get your teeth into. Never fear though, each of the villains can be encountered standalone for when you're all storied out. Is there an order of preference to get these in? Well, not a clear-cut one. Rise of the Red Skull came first and played it fairly safe, with a stellar introduction to bespoke deck building found on Spider-Woman and an underrated Hawkeye also present, plus 3 fairly vanilla villains and 2 slightly harder in Gianfranco Zola and Red Skull. You can't really go wrong with this inaugural of outings. Galaxy's Most Wanted came next with a real hit and miss feel to it. Groot is kinda uninspiring and Rocket can be fun with the right deck, but with the Collector taking up 2 of the 5 available scenarios, leaning heavily on the narrative, and the last boss Ronan the Accuser upping the difficulty to a level we'd not seen before, it doesn't really work that well for the more casual player. Still, it ain't a dud, and if you're a Guardians of the Galaxy fan, then most of what I just said was white noise anyway. Mad Titan's Shadow though featured a bevy of goodies, strong and individual heroes in the form of Adam Warlock and Spectrum, and a splash of pretty much everything across the villain suite. A duo of Thanos' children in Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive, a challenging but fairly straightforward battle with the Mad Titan himself, and then some fantastic scenario design with Hela bringing all sorts of shenanigans and Odin napping, and Loki doing what tricksters do, and bringing multiple incarnations of himself to the table. Which leaves us with sinister motives and all the love it or hate it multiverse manizzle, with Spider-Man Miles and Ghost Spider both bringing web warriors as a new tribe. Master Morales is a bit more forgiving and less finicky than Gwen Stacy, and the 5 villains, including more than one appearance by the Venom symbiote, are in the category of good but not spectacular, ultimately meaning that all 4 choices have merit and will have something to please most. But if I had a gun to my head, I'd pick up Mad Titan's Shadow, then either Rise of the Red Skull or Sinister Motives next, and Galaxy's Most Wanted propping up the rear. Okay, I promise, that's it with the easy stuff. Buy a big box, wear a bib, get good value. But let's critique some hero packs. So the first category is for the spikes out there who want the best and only the best, giving you a kit that can coast against almost anything on standard and drink the tears of villains in higher difficulties as well. Here we have a fairly well defined trio of Captain America, Doctor Strange and Venom. Cap is just an all-round boss with no real weak points. Steffi Strange is absolutely carried by his indubitable invocation deck and stellar signature deck, and Venom has all the fire realms a human alien symbiote could ever need to melt stages against any villain. I'd also like to throw an honourable mention in there as well, because Scarlet Witch is someone I greatly underestimated upon release, but that encounter deck milling turned out to be very much a small inconvenience for the amount of buffs she gets abusing it. She's not quite on the level of those other 3, but the step down is minuscule at best. We then move to the Johnny category for those that want something a little bit different, for when FFG decided to think outside the box a little to concoct heroes that aren't quite your typical. Our first batch look a little something like Ms. Marvel, Gamora and Nebula. Now, I confess to a soft spot for Ms. Marvel because for so long she stood alone in this category, underrated due to her unconventional playstyle, but with a healthy power ceiling that I really enjoyed. Then Gamora, sweet Gamora, the first and still only hero found alone in a pack that has bespoke deck building requirements, and for that alone she deserves a place in this here category. And then Nebula because, well, she has such odd timing with her technique cards, meaning sequencing your card play is key to making the most of her. Then this type of hero really started to buzz as FFG ran out of vanilla ideas to foist on us. So along came Vision, Ironheart and SPDR. Vision just by virtue of his unorthodox form changing, where he could be Mr. Meat Shield in intangible form or bring the efficiency in dense form. Then along came an Ironheart with her start weak, finish like a truck motto, much like Iron Man did in the core set. And then we have the similar slow grow SPDR that has an upgrade and an identity intrinsically tied to each other, representing the alter ego and the suit of armour, just for the resources from upgrades hero that you didn't think you needed in your life. But now it's time for some of you that have like-minded friends to get their own category, when gaming is never so sweet than when you share it with someone. Thank the Marvel Champions design team then for team up heroes. First we had the Ant-Man and the Wasp, who incidentally would have both made the cut in the last category because, well, 3 forms had never been done before. Both identities are strong enough in their own right. Ant-Man's a bit more straightforward and Wasp requires a bit more guile, but either way this team up can win big or small. But whereas Ant-Man and Wasp shared commonalities in playstyle, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch did and do not. Quicksilver is the hero for you if you like turning cards sideways, upright and sideways, again and again, and so on and so forth. And well, we've already covered Scarlet Witch's potency, and so this yin-yang brother-sister duo remains a lot of fun to play. We then interestingly got a better late than never team up when War Machine was released, as his brother-in-arms is none other than Iron Man from the core set. And although these are both thematically similar, they play quite differently. War Machine is all about weapons and his usage of ammo tokens, yet Iron Man was the original setup hero, better in multiplayer where he could be protected for the first few turns, much like Ironheart and SPDR that released more recently. Gamora and Nebula, who we've already covered, also like a bit of team up, so no more words required, but they do allow us to segue nicely to the larger tribes in the game that have a mixture of mechanical and thematic synergies for you to get your teeth into. If you like multiplayer or multi-handed, then you'll be well served indeed by picking up one or many of the heroes with the Guardian keyword. Things kicked off with Groot and Rocket in the Galaxy's Most Wanted box, and then along came Star-Lord, Gamora and Drax if you want to keep things MCU-like. But there's also Venom, Nebula and even Adam Warlock from the Mad Titan Shadow expansion that round out the cast. You've also got Avengers, where you can basically pin the towel on a donkey when you're absolutely hammered and blindfolded to get hold of a few of these little piggies. But the key enabling pieces can be found in the Captain America pack, a couple of the deluxe expansions, namely Rise of the Red Skull and Mad Titan Shadow, and for some wild resource Quinn carrying, you can pick up any one of Black Widow, Wasp or War Machine. More recently we've seen an attempt to bring another couple of tribes into the game, but neither have been completely fleshed out as of yet, that being S.H.I.E.L.D. and Web Warriors, both of which are included heavily in the Sinister Motives Deluxe box. A lot of the S.H.I.E.L.D. synergies are centred around allies and economy, and then you've got the heroes for Web Warriors in the same box. And the more recent Spider-Ham and SPDR bring you up to date. And aloha for those visiting from the future, don't sleep on those new X-Men releases. To round out the hero packs, there's some honourable mentions, with Thor, whose minion-centric hero ability has always upset my sensibilities, but plenty of people like him, Black Widow, who I'm actually quite fond of with her somewhat backfoot playstyle, and Nova, who's a perfectly able purchase but just didn't really fit into any of the above categories. You then have the do not recommends, and there's only 2 firm no-nos from a purely gameplay perspective. Hulk, who they basically Howard the Ducked up, and he makes me want to cry, and Valkyrie, who is in the dog tier alongside him. Look at him. In case you thought I'd lost my marbles, I'm putting Spider-Ham in his own category, the shat bit crazy category, where mechanically interesting, thematically unhinged heroes with very solid power level ensconce themselves. We're just straight up not going to focus too much on villains in this guide because it's impossible to get away from the fact that you get so many of them in the deluxe expansions, so I recommend you focus on them first. But to summarise, Green Goblin did come with 2 scenarios for the price of 1. It just so happens to be that one of them is on the far too easy side of peasy. The Wrecking Crew, I'm sure, taught FFG many lessons on how not to do unconventional scenarios because it's 4 bosses on the table at one time somehow contrived to be dull, bookkeepy and far too easy to cheese. A slight that you certainly cannot level at the once and future Kang. Definitely a very solid villain pack, with interesting stages and more than your usual modular sets. Speaking of which, the Hood was all about its modularity, which is probably its best contribution to Marvel Champions because the villain itself is all over the map when it comes to challenges depending on which of those modular sets you drew. And this was also where you can find the side grade that is the standard modular set version 2. But that was it. I unintentionally ran through everything ever sold to date, at least I think I did. I hope you found this informative and helpful. Alas, I've been the voice in your head and this video has ended.